AP ki purani story ko hum family tension or career responsibility miscommunication ku theme par shift kar rahi hain. Core drama, neighbor ki entry, jealousy, tension or ending ke resolution bilkul wiser hi rahiger, lekin plot bilkul clean or professional YouTube narration commutabik hoger. I never thought a quiet winter evening would completely change the way I look at my relationship with my son. My name is Nora, and I am a 44-year-old single mother who raised her son alone. His name is Tyler, and he is now 22 years old, trying to find his place in the world. We have always been extremely close, relying on each other through every hardship life threw our way. One chilly night, Tyler returned home looking exhausted after working overtime and studying for his exams. He complained about feeling completely unwell and drained, so I suggested he rest under a warm blanket in the living room. Seeing him so overwhelmed brought back memories of when he was a helpless child relying entirely on my protection. I sat near him, offering comforting words to ease his heavy mind. As the house grew quiet, Tyler leaned in and gave me a tight emotional hug like he used to when he was young. It started as a simple moment of comfort, but his posture remained rigid and tense. I could feel his deep breathing and the heavy stress he was carrying inside. I wanted to pull back to give him space, but I stayed still, hoping my presence would bring him peace. A strange silence filled the cold room as neither of us said a word for several minutes. Tyler kept his head buried near my shoulder, holding on tightly as if he was afraid of failing in life. I tried to calm my own rising anxiety, telling myself that this was just an exhausted son needing reassurance. Yet the sudden emotional heaviness between us felt incredibly overwhelming and uncomfortable. Eventually, Tyler lifted his head and looked at me with a mix of frustration and hesitation in his eyes. He seemed deeply embarrassed about showing so much vulnerability and weakness in front of me. I tried to offer a gentle smile to ease his stress, but the awkward silence only deepened. His hand remained on my arm, gripping tightly as if silent words was stuck in his throat. I sat completely frozen, trying to process the intense emotional distance that had suddenly created this wall between us. I kept telling myself that everything was fine and that we were just overwhelmed by life. But in that quiet room I could tell that Tyler was harboring feelings of deep resentment and pressure. The silence between us felt like a storm waiting to break at any second. Suddenly, Tyler pulled back slightly and rubbed the back of his neck with a shaky, nervous laugh. He apologized softly for making things weird and admitting that he was struggling with his current life choices. I reached out and touched his shoulder, trying to reassure him that being lost is a natural part of growing up. He nodded silently, but the tension remained heavy in the air. Just as the atmosphere began to lighten slightly, the sharp ring of the doorbell shattered our fragile moment. The unexpected interruption pulled us both back to reality, and I quickly got up to answer it. Opening the door, I found our friendly neighbor David standing on the porch with a warm, supportive smile. David offered to check our home heating system since the winter weather was getting severe. I welcomed David inside, feeling a sudden wave of relief for the distraction from our uncomfortable conversation. However, as David stepped into the living room, I noticed Tyler watching us from the hallway with intense eyes. The look on Tyler's face resembled pure jealousy and hostility, as if David was invading his personal space. That dark look caught me completely off guard and heightened my anxiety. David checked the heaters and made light conversation, asking how we were managing during this stressful season. I tried my best to engage politely with David, but my eyes kept drifting back toward the hallway. Tyler stood completely still, watching our interaction with a silent anger that made the room feel suffocating. It was obvious that Tyler resented anyone else coming between our small family unit. When David finally said goodbye and left, I closed the door softly and turned around to face my son. Tyler was standing in the corridor with his arms crossed tightly over his chest, refusing to look at me. I asked him gently if he was okay and why David's presence had bothered him so much. Tyler shrugged dismissively, saying he was fine before turning away and walking into his room. The heavy sound of his bedroom door closing felt like a sharp break in our lifelong bond. I sat down on the edge of my bed, trying to make sense of his sudden possessive and defensive behavior. I realized that my son was struggling with becoming an independent adult and felt threatened by the outside world. I knew we could not ignore this growing strain forever and needed to talk. After a few moments, a soft knock sounded at my door, and Tyler slowly stepped inside, looking defeated. He sat beside me on the bed, staring down at his hands in complete silence. He whispered that he was deeply confused about his life and apologized for taking his frustration out on me. I placed my hand over his, offering the steady support he desperately needed. Tyler admitted that he felt lost and terrified of failing, which caused him to cling so tightly to our past. I explained to him that growing up means facing uncertainty and taking a step back to gain independence. Hearing those words, Tyler rested his head on my shoulder, seeking the safe comfort of his childhood one last time. I wrapped my arm around him, holding him protectively. We sat together in peaceful silence, realizing that our relationship had to evolve into something healthier and mature. A second gentle knock at the front door announced David returning to drop off an extra heater. Tyler stood up calmly this time, showing no signs of anger or childish jealousy. We both recognized that taking time to grow individually was the only way to move forward together.